Hey everybody, it's Mike Al with Savage Kingdom's role-playing game and Fire in the Head Productions. I'm wearing my ugly hat, but it does have the Savage Kingdom's logo at the top, right? So that's the only reason I'm wearing it because it's kind of weird and I don't know, it's kind of very head huggy. But thought I'd throw it on because it's got the SK logo on it. So speaking of SK or Savage Kingdoms, this video is about healing in the Savage Kingdoms 3rd edition role-playing game. 3rd edition being the current edition. And here is the core rule book that I've shown numerous times, but I can't show enough. There you go. Because we will be referring to it in several things. So, all right, first of all, so this is healing, different ways to heal in Savage Kingdoms role-playing game. So Savage Kingdoms being a grittier, more Dark Ages kind of sword and sorcery-ish role-playing game, mundane healing is probably far more common. Well, I mean, I know it is for sure beyond the PCs, but even with player characters, it's still, I see it more common, which was the intent, than magical healing. The only way you can heal magically is through well, there's some ways to do it in herbalism and even through alchemy, but it's the life magic discipline of magical arts. But I'll get to that in a moment. First, I'm going to start with mundane healing. And the best way to approach that is the healing arts skill. In the skill chapter of the core rulebook on page 141, there's the entry for healing arts. It's based on intellect. This is the art of tending to the sick and fallen, whether to tend wounds, set broken bones, neutralize poisons, cure diseases, or diagnose a creature's ailments. Much of it involves cleaning and bandaging, as well as applying poultices or cruder things like stitching lacerations or cauterizing open wounds. So there you go. So yeah, it's more of a mundane approach. Stitching of wounds goes pretty far back. I think some people think it's more of a modern technique for healing, but it actually goes way to the Roman era. I think even before, to the Greek, probably to the Chinese actually. So um, cauterizing wounds also is like I think humankind knew about that a long time ago. To just kind of it's a very crude way of, but pretty effective actually if you don't mind dealing with scarred tissue damage. But it is a good way to close a wound up in a pinch and keeping disease and in some cases poisons from spreading throughout the body. So stuff like that has been known for a while, including setting broken bones, particularly with crude splints made out in the wilderness, and with a couple of sticks of wood, that kind of thing. The stuff we learned in Boy Scouts and things like that. Leeches, leechcraft was kind of a thing that's kind of like modern medicine, and some aspects have brought some of that back, particularly with holistic approaches. Um, yeah, because leeches are good at drawing poisons out. That's what they were used for, and in some cases they were overused. They were used for wrong purposes because they didn't really didn't know any better. But our ancestors were pretty wise and creative people, so they figured out a lot of this stuff even before we did, even if they weren't always applying it in the right situations or didn't know every detail about it scientifically. All right, so the healing art skill, there's armor. So I'm just kind of going through the skill list. So armor penalty, no, there's no penalty for using healing arts and armor. It doesn't really matter. Skill specialties. So remember, a specialty is something you can start with as a human character. Actually, I think some of the non-human races get an option or two of that as well. But most humans, depending on your culture, get 3 skill specialties to choose from. The depending on your culture part is the selection you get to choose from. It's very culture specific. And also for every 3 skill levels that you have in a skill, you gain a specialty as well, and healing arts is no exception. So the skill specialties that I have listed that are published here on page 141 are birthing, broken bones, chirurgery, diseases, fresh wounds, healing herbs, long-term care, poisons, specific creature. I think it covers a lot. These are hard suggestions, by the way, these skill specialties, meaning that most likely just allow the ones listed, but occasionally a player, I've had some couple players come up with some creative ones or that I might have overlooked as well, like, oh yeah, that's a good choice for a skill specialty. But in general, I would allow mostly just the ones that are there. To go over a few of those to make sense, so broken bones sounds kind of weird. I have a specialty in broken bones, but it means obviously healing art, tending to broken bones. Um, birthing, is I guess kind of self-explanatory. Chirurgery is kind of a medieval term for earlier forms of surgery. Treating diseases, treating fresh wounds, which I'll get to in a second. More specifically, healing herbs. So long-term care, which I'll get to in a minute. Poisons and specific creature healing. So that's like you're skilled at, you're specialized in healing in particular, like Shi or Duergar or goblins or horses, stuff like that. So that's actually how you could kind of really get into veterinarian type healing arts, is to specialize in healing horses or dogs or cats or camels or whatever. So, all right. So these are typical tasks and their difficulty levels done with the healing art skill. Typical tasks. So diagnose the general nature of an ailment or injury is DL10. That means difficulty level 10 in SK parlance. That's moderately difficult, DL15. Or no, sorry, DL10. Diagnose the general nature of an ailment or injury, DL10. Because that's fairly easy. Generally easy to examine someone and go like, oh, it's a broken bone, or I think this might be a disease or something. Diagnose a rare or unusual injury / ailment is DL15. So some kind of like less common thing is DL15 to diagnose. I think he's got some kind of alchemical poison in his body. I'm not real sure. Something like that. Stop an unconscious and wounded human or humanoid from bleeding out is DL10. Because it's pretty intuitive for humans to know to stop blood from coming out of someone with a crude strip of cloth or whatever sort of tourniquet that you can make. It takes 2 actions to do that. It's about 6 seconds, which takes a decent amount of skill. So that's why it's not even lower than DL10, because to do it in a couple, like 6 heartbeats is takes a little bit of skill. Stop an unconscious and wounded exotic creature from bleeding out is DL15. So something that's not human or human-like. So all the player character races would be under the DL10 one, the more common or uncommon. Exotic would be more like a rare. I was going to say a horse, but I think that's common enough to most cultures. So something rare, like a yak or a reptile, or pretty much any kind of reptile from bleeding out, like because that'd be considered exotic. And certainly some of the more supernatural creatures, a dragon or something like that. So, all right, here's kind of the big one. Treat fresh wounds has an asterisk, which I'll get to in a second. It's DL15, difficulty level 15. However, the higher you roll, the better. So the patient heals 1 health point plus 1 per 2 points rolled over the DL. For example, if you rolled an 18, that patient would be restored 2 health points. Because again, it's 1 plus every 2 points that you score over the DL of 15. So an 18 is 2 points over, not quite 4, right? And then the 1 point for for the base 1 period. So for example, say DL 23 would heal. The math here is kind of weird. I've done it a million times in my head, and now I can't do it suddenly because I'm on camera. That's 4, I think, right? 3. Yeah. So that would heal 4. Yeah. So that's how that works. That's treating fresh wounds. Okay. So the caveat to that, the asterisk, means fresh wounds mean injuries that were caused less than 15 minutes ago. After this time, they are considered old wounds. Those are in quotes. Only treatable by long-term care or healing magic, which I'll get to in a second. So you have to you have to get to that patient, be a PC or NPC or whatever, within 15 minutes, or else the wounds there's not much you can do. The wounds are either scabbed over, or you're already in a different, like, critical crisis area that you can't do it. Basically, it's also a game mechanic to keep someone from going, oh yeah, remember that sword wound you took 9 hours ago? I'm going to attend to it now. It's like, well, game-wise, it's kind of ridiculous, but also realistically speaking, that's 9 hours. Yeah, that 9 hours later is like that person's either died from the wound already or found some other means to be healed by it. Probably not ignoring it for the most part. So yeah. The next thing on the task of things you can do in the healing art skill is administer long-term care, also known as treat old wounds in previous editions, and you can call it the same thing. The reason I changed it to long-term care, I just came remember this like a day ago. I actually posted something in one of the Facebook groups about house ruling one of my house rules. And it's not really a house rule. This is what I intended. So long-term care, I intended that you to be in a safe spot and you're not really moving that much. Light. It says you can do light activities, so you can walk around, read, whatever. Um, I was even allowing in my campaigns people you could ride on horseback, but I don't think I'm going to do that anymore because my original intent was that you were in a comfortable room, like a temple room, or even a fine room in an inn, even not a fine room in an inn, even sleeping on the floor in a tavern next to the fire, just a kind of safe place where it's relatively warm. You do have access to water. Because the next thing is that when a healer is treating a patient with long-term care, it's saying that you need, let's see, long-term care requires the healer to tend to the patient at least once an hour, cleaning bandages, administering food and drink, etc. So you have to kind of check on them, right? So that's what that's about. It's also why it's not that difficult. It's DL10 to administer long-term care. The patient heals 1 health plus his or her vigor per 12 hours. So without long-term care, so going back to that sword wound that I said that you probably shouldn't ignore, but if it were a light enough wound, you could, I guess, probably technically ignore it. I mean, the rules support it. So you would heal 1 health point per 24 hours. Long-term care allows you to heal twice as fast. So that's either 1 point per 12 hours, which is the way I do it and the way it's published in the book, or you can do 2 points per 12 hours. Plus his or her vigor. So for example, if there's a character that has a +2 vigor, they would heal 3 points without every 24 hours without long-term care, or 6 points every 24 hours, or if you want to do it, 3 points every 12 hours with long-term care. That's how I do it. Most PCs want as much healing as quickly as possible, so I do it every 12 hours instead of every 24 hours. I also feel like that's sort of more realistic. I have to do that because it's a fantasy game. But this game is based kind of on a historical reality. It's kind of a gritty game, so I shouldn't have a problem saying realistic. I guess I should say believable. Instead of having, so in other words, I think it's more believable to have, like, I know we're using points, which is fantasy, but 3 points every 12 hours instead of suddenly 6 points of healing after 24 hours. But however you want to do the math, whatever's easier on your game master and player character brain. Next thing is neutralize poison in a creature. It's DL equals poison's original resistance, DL +5. Let me break that down. So the difficulty level to successfully neutralize poison is based on the original poison's DL, or difficulty level, +5. For example, say you get bit by a giant snake and the difficulty level to resist the poison is 15, and you fail to do that and you're poisoned, and now a healer has to try to figure it out, try to fix it, try to neutralize it, and so now the DL is 20 for the healing arch roll because it's the original DL +5, right? Or you're some more exotic poison, like some alchemical poison, such as maiden's. I'm forgetting all my cool poisons, such as maiden's blood. I think it's like DL 18 or 19. So to cure it after the fact that someone got poisoned, assuming they're still alive, would be like DL 23 or 24 at that point. So pretty difficult. Next thing is cure disease in a creature. The DL equals the disease's original resistance DL +5. So kind of like poison. In SK disease, DLs tend to be maybe 1 or 2 points higher than point, depending on how exotic the disease is. But anyway, it's the same general thing. So it's just add 5 to the original DL of the disease if the patient failed and they're suffering from the disease. In order to cure it, the DL is now 5 higher than the original one. So there you go. As it should be. It's really difficult to cure a moderate to severe disease with just kind of standard mundane healing without the use of some herbs and stuff. So it's kind of what that represents. Not impossible, but very difficult, and that hence the high DL. All right, so time required. It takes generally a minute to diagnose an injury or ailment. Stopping a creature's bleeding when into negative health points takes 2 actions, which I think I mentioned already. Treating fresh wounds requires a good 10 minutes time and must be tended to within 15 minutes or they become old wounds, like I said. And that's another kind of gameism, it allows a healer can only really get to one person with treat. You can't deal with two people at once with treating fresh wounds. It's a lot more serious. It takes a lot more attention, and that's also why it takes 10 minutes. Long term care requires the healer to. I already read that part. I think I put somewhere in these rules that you can tend to up to 4 patients at one time with long-term care. Maybe there's not a limit. Yeah, I didn't actually. I thought about publishing an actual limit, like it was either 4 or 6 patients or 5 patients. I think I just kind of left it open to like common sense, because I feel like a skilled healer in some like healing hospice healing house or even some temple healer not using magic, I feel like that person could probably tend to 8 or 10, maybe a dozen people, if they're doing it professionally. They're knowing how to kind of go around, kind of like in the real world. You've got nurses that are maybe dealing with a dozen patients, and as long as they make their rounds and have it kind of planned out, they can kind of deal with it as long as nothing's like super serious where they might have to summon a doctor or something. But so just kind of keep all that in mind. All right, so skill level achievements for healing arts. For every skill levels you've attained, you may choose one specialty. At skill level 4, you gain a +1 bonus to herbalism skill rolls because, like I said earlier, herbalism is somewhat related to healing arts, different enough that it's 2 different skills, however, because herbalism can also deal with making poisons and cooking herbs and stuff like that. At skill level 7, you gain, there's a typo in the book. It's supposed to say you gain +1 to all magical arts life and survival rolls. As published, it actually says you gain to all magical arts life and survival rolls. I don't know what you gain. My intent was that you gain a +1 bonus to magical arts life and survival rolls. So, magical arts colon life and survival being its own thing. And that's to represent the fact that you're so good at healing that it kind of naturally plays into life magic, because life magic, a lot of healing is there. Not all the spells are healing in life magic. There's also animating out, using life force to animate objects, stuff like that, but mostly. And then survival kind of makes sense. And at skill level 10, you gain a +1 bonus to your health and renown. So your health actually goes up because you've learned to take care of yourself better as a healer, and your renown goes up just because you're being a master or grandmaster healer. It would be like a lot of people would think that's cool. All right, critical success of healing arts. If there's the different things there. If diagnosing, you do so in merely a round's time, 2 actions instead of a full minute. If stopping the bleeding of a creature, you do so as but 1 action instead of 2. That can be kind of cool. If treating fresh wounds, you do so in merely 1 minute instead of 10. Pretty good. You grant the patient +1 to health and stamina for 1 hour's time. So these are if you critically succeed your healing or roll on whatever task that you're doing. And again, some of these don't necessarily apply to whatever task it is, but the GM will use common sense. Critical failure. If diagnosing, you come to a completely wrong assessment. Number 2, you cause a creature who is bleeding out to lose 1 additional health point per point. I've seen that one happen a couple times. It's like one of the worst ones. You're literally causing more harm than good, bleeding out to lose 1 additional health point per point of critical failure. Yeah, so if you crit with a -2, that's 2 points of failure. They're bleeding out 2 additional points. That could kill someone. I've actually seen that happen. I've seen 7 years. I've seen it happen twice where healing arts critical failure actually killed a character, and one of them was actually a really dramatic scene, and that character took that as part of his through line for his character. Like he kept that death that kind of literally felt, his friend kind of passing away right in front of him, with some really good role playing for the next couple of sessions. Number 3, if treating fresh wounds, you could further damage. You cause further damage equal to 1 health point per point of critical failure. Wait, did we just do that one? Oh, it's 2 different. One is that if you're bleeding out. Oh yeah, the other one is treating fresh wounds. So you're just trying to stitch them up, and then you make it even worse. So it's 2 different instances, but it's the same kind of mechanical result. Number 4, you cause a disease, poison, or long-term care patient to either permanently lose a point of health or gain the disfigured, lame, or maimed weakness. So yeah, he does such a bad job that the person has a permanent effect. Disfigured means it's more of a facial thing. They suffer to magnetism-based rolls. Lame is more of a leg or ankle injury, or and I think it's -1 or -2 to mobility. And then maimed is more to do with your hands. So you made someone lose a finger or something like that, and that can be -1 to agility-based things dealing with that hand or arm. All right, so that's the healing arts skill. We're here at about 20 minutes. That's not too bad because there's not too much that I'm going to be talking about left to go. But I will go into herbalism, not only because it's the next skill right after, alphabetically right after healing arts, but because again, it is somewhat related or can be somewhat related. Herbalism is also based on the intellect attribute, just like healing arts. This skill represents one's aptitude for the various herbs, roots, or herbs, however you want to pronounce it. Depends on what part of the world you're from, if you're English and American. Roots and flora of the world and their various uses and applications. This could be anything from simple hemlock or nightshade, all the way up to the numerous varieties of semi-magical lotus plants, particularly white lotus. Armor penalty, no. Specialties, cooking, healing, locating, preserving specific terrain. So, for example, you might be better at finding herbs in the forest or marsh or plains or mountains or whatever. And then the other specialties, I guess, are pretty obvious. You specialize in cooking herbs or healing or locating or locating herbs or preserving them. Identifying them could be another one that I actually left off, so that could also be an option. I'm not going to go into all the detail because this video is not about herbalism specifically, because a different task of herbalism is identifying in general knowledge of a common herb, rare herb, locating a wild herb, drying and preserving a common herb, blah blah blah. Creating a special herbal concoction, and that's a whole list of these cool things that you can create with herbalism skill that some of you probably already know about, such as borrowweed and black lotus, poison and blood. So you can make poisons through herbalism, not just through alchemy. It's just the alchemical ones typically a little more potent, but you can find some pretty nasty stuff growing in the wilderness in savage kingdoms, depending on what part of the world you're in. Hemlock poison, fairy-wort, white lotus flower. White lotus is the best kind of, I was going to say non-magical healing, but it's technically kind of a magical herb, so I always kind of call it quasi-magical or demi-magical. Mandrake brew, witch root. Anyway, mistletoe abortive. Anyway, so I wasn't going to dwell on herbalism. But herbalism can apply it to healing. For example, if you have 4 skill levels in herbalism, you gain a +1 bonus to the healing arts skill itself. So I would go in the other column in the skill section. What else? And so that's the only time it really shows up as game mechanically, is adding more to skill, other than finding some of those healing herbs that I found and making a concoction out of it. So those are yet another way you can do healing in Savage Kingdom. So in summary, we've got the healing art skill. There's more stitches and long-term, stuff like that, leeches. Herbalism, which you can find quasi-magical herbs to heal people or to help heal. There's also healing pouches that you can list in the equipment list that give a +1 bonus to healing arts rolls for up to 10 applications, I believe. Or is it 12? I think it's 10. So stuff like that. Let me go to alchemy really quick. That sounds really weird for healing, but there is one thing that does healing in alchemy. Actually, there's 2 things. One of them, the first one, is the healing salve that you can make. I've seen that get used pretty often, fairly often. Where's that healing salve? There it is. Salve, healing. That's why I couldn't find it, because it's now been from Ulda. It's DL12 to identify, DL15 to create. You must have alchemy level 2 and herbalism level 1. So this skill you have to have some herbalism training and alchemy. Material costs 3 silver pieces per dose. Time required is 2 hours, and it costs you 2 stamina points. So in other words, 1 stamina point per hour of work making this healing salve. And it costs 3 silver pieces. So in other words, that represents you have to buy a few other items, a few rare ingredients to put in there. So basically, this represents several types of concentrated salve or balm, a concoction containing alchemy, but also a pinch of healing herbs and poultices. If rubbed into a fresh wound, an injury, or wound that occurred in the past 15 minutes, which costs 1 action, the patient will heal twice his normal rate. If successful long-term care has been applied, then the healing rate is tripled. Note that this also grants a +2 bonus to endurance rolls when resisting disease or poison, and the effects lasting for 1 hour. So if somebody's suffering from poison or disease, you can put the salve on it so that the next time they have to make you make a healing arts roll for them, or if they have to make an endurance roll for another stage of the poison or disease, that gives them a +2 bonus. Or you could even put it on before, like if someone was about to face like a poisonous creature, you'd be like, hey, put the salve on. So either way. Yeah, so very cool. And it triples the healing rate of long-term care as well. So I think I read that. So yeah, that's the only kind of heat. Other than I said there were two. The other one is called Jaya or Jaya. It's a Sleer word, Sleerian. So we technically don't pronounce it correct as humans. But Jaya is what I intended it to kind of sound like. Not quite sh, but kind of like a French J, like a ja, Jaya. You can say Jaya, that's fine. But it just basically means Sleerian healing elixir. I think I determined in Sleer or Sleerian it actually means, I think it just means elixir, and it implies that it is for healing. It's DL20 to identify, so if you were to find any adventures, it's pretty hard to figure out that this is Jaya. It's DL20 to create, also fairly difficult. You must have alchemy level 4 to even like try it, have the thoughts of how to make it. Material cost is 15 silver pieces per dose. Time required is 3 hours / 3 stamina cost. So it costs 1 point per hour of stamina. So that's 3 total for 3 hours. A foul tasting but quite effective elixir invented by the serpent folk, also known as the Sleer, eons ago. One imbibed vial of Shaya instantly heals 5 health points and restores 5 stamina points if the drinker is a Sleer of any caste. If not a Sleer, then the imbiber must attempt a DL10 endurance roll. If he succeeds, then he heals 5 health points but no stamina. If he fails, then he is nauseated for 1/2 hour and has a sickened condition during that time. Jaya is quite rare and not exactly common anymore, even to the Sleer race. Nonetheless, serpent folk gain a +5 bonus to identify and create it. So the DL20 to identify and DL20 to create would be 15s for Sleer. So keep that in mind. It's all asterisk, so you should be able to see it. So yeah, so the overall arc there is that you can see why it's expensive. It heals not only 5 health but 5 stamina. It kind of refreshes you. Um, but if you're not a Sleer, you could be nauseated by it, and it might still heal you, but you're going to be like sick for half an hour and just kind of bleh. So yeah, um, and the intent was there again to show that the serpent folk are very alien and not really close to. I mean, they're not mammals for starters; they're really close to humankind at all. So some of the stuff they make is very creepy and can make you sick and stuff like that. All right, so moving on. That's the only healing that you can do in alchemy. The last thing I'll conclude the video in is probably the one most people have been waiting for, and that's healing magic. So I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So the first sort of healing spell is called Cure Ailment. Cure Ailment. I don't know why I can never say that right. Seems simple enough. Cure Ailment. Cure Ailment. Right? Cure illness. Maybe that sounds better. But anyway, I intended it to be ailment because ailment's a broader term. It could be poison, disease, or whatever. And that's literally what it's for. It is a spell to neutralize disease or poison. It is of the discipline of life magic. Prerequisites are magical arts life level 3. So, and you could start with level 3. So that's because you can start with up to 3 skill levels at any given skill. So if you want to put 3 skill levels in magical arts life, you could learn the spell. DL is the DL is C below. In other words, it depends on the DL of the poison or disease that you're trying to cure. So the difference is, so you use the actual DL. So if you're trying to remember that example earlier of the giant serpent that bit a theoretical character, I think I said it was DL 15 in this case. So the DL for the spell to work would only be 15. So whereas if you're doing it through mundane healing arts, it's DL 20. So really the spell allows you to really just kind of lower the DL of healing a poison or disease in someone by 5. It's really the main benefit for it. The stamina cost is 2 for ailments up to DL 20 and 4 for ailments of DL 21 or greater. So obviously it costs more stamina for a more powerful or potent disease or poison. It requires more concentration and focus and innate power. Health cost, and oh, by the way, so there's a health cost. So that reminded me the next little cool thing I want to get to in Savage Kingdoms because I think it's fairly unique to most, if not all, fantasy role playing games. So when I was designing the world, I wanted to like when I used to run D, and I still run D&D 5th edition for kids and stuff. I actually run it professionally and stuff at camps and things. But for adults, we almost always play Savage Kingdoms. They typically prefer it over D&D. So, but when I was running D&D a lot, and even in my kids games, in one of the settings, which I use Savage Kingdoms by the way, I do it as well. To explain healing magic and why it's just this, why isn't the entire village cured by the cleric that knows cure wounds, like the age old question. I know, yes, time, blah blah blah, but still, it could be done, right? So the caveat to that, the way to get rid of that, and also to make healing magic more gritty in Savage Kingdoms, which is more sword and sorcery, kind of. There's a health tax. So whenever a healer is using healing magic to heal, cure an ailment or poison, or actually heal wounds specifically, wounds themselves, which I'll get to in a second, probably more in a few seconds. There's a health tax to that healer. So in this case, health cost is 1 per 2 stamina points spent. So if you were curing a poison or disease of DL 20 or less, it costs you 2 stamina. It would only cost you 1 health in this case. But if it was DL 21 or greater, like a more potent poison or disease, it would cost you 2 health, right? Because it costs 4 stamina points. So there you go. So it explains why healers are not always so ready to jump on the wagon to heal someone. Oh yeah, I know heal spell, I know cure wounds and that sort of thing, or heal wounds as it is in SK. Because there's like, well, I'm going to be hurting myself. And the way it's explained thematically, and I think it's even explained in the spell description when I get to it, is the healer is you're using some of your life force to put it into another. So it implies you're not conjuring. I think in D&D it's now conjuration magic for healing. You're actually, instead of conjuring out of nowhere, or you're kind of putting your own life force into the other person. I think that's kind of cool and thematic. So anyway, wanted to share that. Casting time is 1 action. Range is touch. You have to actually touch the patient. Area effect area is 1 disease or poison creature. Obviously, duration permanent. That would kind of suck if you were only cured for a minute. Ritual components, at least 2 of the following: a bowl of pure water, a bowl or brazier of fire, an intact egg, or a white lotus petal. A finger bone or a lock of hair from a martyred priest of St. Paladir as an additional component grants a further +1 bonus to ritualized castings of the spell. So remember, if you cast spells at ritual, you gain, which takes an hour, you gain another +2 to the magical arts roll. If you were to have one of those, that special thing that I talked about, you would have +3 after a ritual. So very cool. Those little pluses add up, by the way. So, oh, some people have asked, like, why is an egg? Like, why is there an intact egg? Is very much a symbol of life and healing, and the ancient world, and even kind of the early Middle Ages. So I like to pull from a lot of that stuff. So think about it, egg does represent almost raw life, right? There's a living being that's going to come out of there, and it required life force to make it on top of that, and the joining of life forces to create that egg. So I think it's very symbolic, right? So that is cure ailment. Now let's go to the big one, heal wounds, the one that probably gets used the most. But again, not nearly as much as say cure wounds in D&D, which is awesome. That was my intent. I wanted it to be because of the health tax and because there's only 1 discipline of magic of the 7 disciplines in Savage Kingdoms that you can even get healing magic from, and that's life magic, I guess, for obvious reasons. All right, heal wound spells on page 217 of the core rulebook. Discipline is life, obviously. Prerequisites, magical arts, life level 1. So, did I mean? Yeah, I guess I did mean that. So that means you can literally start, if you just have 1 skill level. And I think the reason I did that way is it's kind of like the start, like it's kind of the building blocks of healing, like treating wounds. I feel like that would be learned. Curing poisons as diseases are kind of the next step, and that's why you need magical arts level 3 for that life level. Magical arts life level 3. Again, you can start with it, but it does, you had to put more points into it. Difficulty level for casting heal wounds is DL 10 for a single creature or 15 for a radial effect. I think this occasionally gets overlooked. So if you want to, and it's touch, by the way. So if you want to heal a singular person, you got to touch them, and it's only DL 10. They heal a number of points. They heal 1 point, and then another point per 2 points over the DL. Kind of like with the healing art skill, but this is based on DL 10, so the math's a lot easier. So say you roll a 16 with your healing arts, with your heal wounds, your life magic roll, that would heal 4, right? Because 6 points over is 3, and then the bonus 1, so 4. So you can see even just by rolling a 16 with this spell, you can heal someone 4 health points, which is pretty significant in SK. Or a 21 would heal someone 6 points. of the maximum is you can heal. I believe I have a maximum here. I think it's 10 points. Oh, did I not put it? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Maximum health points restored per casting is 10 in either application. And what I mean by either application is for the radial effect, the DL15, the harder version of the spell, everyone within a yard of you, of the healer, of the healing magician, the life mage, is restored 1 health per point over DL15, because that's obviously harder to extend your life force out to multiple people, being the intent there. So, for example, if you rolled an 18 with the DL15 version, everybody with you and everybody within 2 yards of you would only heal 2 health. But that could be 3 or 4 people in the area of 5, so it's pretty good. This represents using a small measure of your own life force. So yeah, okay. So this is where I actually wrote what the health tax, what it represented story-wise. Heal wounds is 2 stamina for the single creature, or in 1 health. Right? Yeah, or it costs 4 stamina for the radial effect, and 2 health points. So kind of similar to the cure element spell. A heal wound spell has no effect on poisons, diseases, curses, or other such maladies and conditions, but see the cure element spell entry. So just want to make it clear that it's literally just for wounds, lacerations, bruises, and stuff, and not even broken bones, but not for diseases, poisons, curses, etc. Critical success of the heal wounds. You could potentially get any additional health points healed over the target's maximum or kept up to an amount equal to 2 plus the patient's vigor for 1 hour's time. So it says 10, so maybe you could, if somebody had a vigor of amount of equal to 2 plus 2, 2 plus, so they could heal up to 12 health points if you rolled high enough to where the math works out for that. Number 2, you expend 2 stamina points less than normal, which is awesome because that would be, you could have cast the single version for free. But remember, it says stamina, so you still pay the 1 health. Or if you were doing the radial version, not radio, did I say radio? Radial version, aura version, it would only be 2 stamina in that case, but still 2 health points. Number 3, you boost the patient's vigor by +1 for 1 hour. So you heal them so well, they're like juiced up, right? So their vigor goes up by 1, which means their health goes up by 1, and any skill based on vigor and stamina would go up by 1 too, because vigor is also in the formula. Number 4, you grant the target +2 to stamina for 1 hour. So there you go. All right, critical failure possibilities. Number 1, the patient feels worse, suffering a -1 to vigor for 1 hour. Made them worse. Number 2, you take some of the hurt and pain into your own body, suffering an additional point of health and stamina damage per point of critical failure, maximum of 5. Ouch. So yeah, you kind of hurt yourself. You overtax your health into that person or people, and you end up hurting yourself doing it that way, like literally hurting yourself. Number 3, you gain the disfigured or phobia of fresh blood, minor version, your choice of which. If you critically fail this resistance roll, then you acquire the lame or maimed weakness, your choice instead. I'm not sure what I meant there. So for starters, the first part of it says you gain the disfigured or phobia of fresh blood weakness. So, which is kind of cool. That's the minor version, which means it's only DL10 resolve roll to overcome that weakness whenever the situation applies. But still, kind of fun to role play, kind of interesting. Number 4, you expend 2 additional stamina points, so it took more stamina. So a reminder in Savage Kingdoms 3rd edition, you still spend the full stamina if the spell doesn't manifest correctly or doesn't work. So in this case, if it were radial effect, it would cost you 6 stamina for nothing to happen. So again, it's a critical failure for a reason. Trying to figure out what I meant for that one. I feel like that's your choice. Oh, that's the leftover thing. Yeah, I think it's a mistake in the number 3 part there. Just ignore it. Yeah, that's heal wounds. I think that's about it. So those are the different ways you can heal. How healing works in the Savage Kingdoms 3rd edition role-playing game. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I didn't mean for it to quite last almost 40 minutes, but I think it would cover a lot of stuff. Hopefully it was quite helpful. So check out the rest of these videos, the Savage Kingdoms. Do definitely like the video if you like it, because it definitely helps the algorithm and all that crazy stuff. check out Savage Kingdoms. Support the game if you can. It's a very small indie game, and I'm trying to kind of keep it going. And thanks as always, guys. Like, subscribe, share, and all that stuff. Talk to you again soon.